Hi, Greg. I'm Patrick. Nice to
Hey,
meet
Patrick.
you. I'm very eager to learn more about you and how you started your company, and I'm very excited.
All right, cool.
Hey, Greg. Name is Ronald. It's nice to meet you. It's a pleasure to have you today, and I'm looking forward to what you're going to say.
All right, you guys are putting the pressure on here.
Hi, Greg. I'm Solomon.
Hey, Solomon.
Looking forward to hearing from you today about how entrepreneurship shaped your career so far.
Yeah. Cool.
How you doing, Greg? My name is Spencer Cannon. Excited to hear your experience and try to take something away from that.
All right.
And I believe I am the last person.
Okie doke. Excellent. So, Lori, should I go ahead and get started then?
Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead and start. I just want to make sure you know who the students were on here. And then just, this is a program that's being done through a partnership with New York State Department of Labor. So these are all scholarship candidates who came in and went through a pretty rigorous interview process and were accepted into the program. And they've been working their butts off for the past few month or so. And amazing where many of these students came in with no coding skills at all. And now they're doing JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and just really doing exceptionally well. So off to you.
Wow, that's great. Excellent. Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you, Lori, and thank you all for joining today and for the invite to share some of my experience. I figure I have an outline I'll follow loosely here, and there's plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Whether it's related to this or just general entrepreneurship, business type of questions. I'm leaving plenty of time to do that. And also, I'll give you guys my email, my social channels as well. If there's questions or you need advice after this one meeting, feel free to reach out anytime. More than happy to help or mentor anyone that's looking to get their career started or start a new business. So with that, my name is Greg Hanson. I am the CEO of Hanson Group. Hanson Group is a Microsoft partner. We're a global reseller of Microsoft software. We also do Microsoft consulting services and a lot of different sort of Microsoft. We're a very big Microsoft partner, right? A lot of development, a lot of cloud deployments, a lot of software installations for typically small to medium companies. We have offices in North in Central America, as well as Europe, Africa, and Asia. We're in about 16 different countries to date. I work out of our U.S. headquarters, which is in New York City. My office is on the 85th floor of the World Trade Center, One World Trade, here in New York City. In addition to being CEO at Hanson Group, I'm also the CEO of a charity that I started a few years ago called Cloud for Impact. The charity focuses on getting veterans trained in Azure, women trained in Azure, and communities with socioeconomic needs to get into cloud and assistance. So with all three of those groups, we provide free Azure training, free Azure certification, free Azure and paid internship for job experience, and then certifications within Azure so that by the time you're through with the program, at no cost to you, you're Azure certified, you have reference, you've worked on some accounts and projects that you can reference, and then we also help those students get careers in Azure, whether it's at Hanson Group or any one of the hundreds of customers that we have. We'll distribute your resume to them and promote you on social. So if you do at some point ever are interested in a career in Azure, definitely let me know. There's some additional training that we could provide after you graduate this class. All right. give me 1 second. So I thought first I would start off with sort of my story, kind of how I got to where I am. So I was born in Michigan. My parents divorced when I was 2 years old. I lived with my mom, who remarried many times after that and moved around a lot. So I'm not, you don't have to be a psychologist to figure out that all that created a very difficult childhood for me. Not having a father role model, living with a single mother. And then around 9 years old, I was diagnosed with a minor learning disability, sort of this mild dyslexia. So the deck was stacked against me to begin with. But somehow, I ended up finishing high school and then went on to college and graduated college. I was a C student in both. In fact, one of my favorite expressions is C students rule the world. Just because if you look at most of the CEOs at public companies, most of the politicians, even most of the presidents and vice presidents were all C students. So I always like that saying. But after graduating university, I got a degree in IT as well as management. Took me an extra year just because I'm a little slower than most, but it took me 5 years, but I graduated college. Right out of college, I got recruited by a company called Perot Systems, which is an IT company in Dallas. I went to college actually down in Texas. So I started working at Perot Systems as an entry-level junior systems engineer. Was there for about 2 years where I really learned a program not many people know, which in hindsight was a blessing because it was sort of a very valuable skill set. Sometimes you'll notice the more unique the development tool or the software you're working with, sometimes that's a benefit. And it was for me. At that time, Microsoft hired me out of Perot Systems. This was in 1997, so quite a while ago. Yeah, so Microsoft hired me, and I worked at Microsoft. I jumped around inside of Microsoft a lot. I started off as a support engineer, and then I moved into a coding role in Redmond, worked at the headquarters for a little while. And then I went to Microsoft Consulting Services. So that was the consulting arm of Microsoft at the time, and I moved there into New York. So yeah, so I started. So by that time, it's probably around year 2000. I'm in New York working for Microsoft as a consultant. It was a great time, and then 9/11 happened. And actually, at the time, I was working with a lot of different partners as a Microsoft employee, and I saw how much fun they were having. It wasn't like the big corporate environment that Microsoft is like and big corporations are like. And I always sort of had in the back of my mind, it'd be fun to go and start one of those. But there was so much competition at the time that I figured there's no way I'll ever get it off the ground. But after 9/11, what I noticed was a lot of companies, a lot of partners actually went out of business. And I figured, listen, if there's any time I'm going to start this, I should start it now. Sort of very similar to when, it's very difficult for a tree to grow in a forest, but if there's a forest fire and all the trees burn down, it's very easy for these little guys to sort of get up and grow and sprout. And that's the way I kind of looked at the market back then. And I encourage entrepreneurs, if you're looking to start a business, it's always good to do it in the down cycle. That way you can ride the wave up. Like now's a perfect time. Actually, now's a great time to open a bar or restaurant. You can get really good leases. But even just any sort of business, a lot of businesses were affected by this, and you can turn that into an advantage when starting out. And that's what I did. In February of 2002, I started Hanson Group. It was just me. I didn't borrow any money, didn't raise any money. For the first 9 months, I was the sole employee here. After 9 months, I was able to drum up enough business. I was doing the sales and all the consulting work at the same time until I got enough projects to come in where I could hire one more person. And then, here I am 18 years later with around 170 employees worldwide. Our revenues are around 25 million per year. Last year, they'll be higher this year, but yeah, we went. I think our first year we did maybe $150,000 in sales. But my whole approach was to slow grow it and grow it organically. There's a lot of emphasis with entrepreneurs today to, let's blow this thing up overnight. Let's raise a bunch of capital, which is one way to do it. I don't subscribe to that view set. I think it's better to grow it organically and grow it slowly in a controlled manner, and also by not raising money and going that route, you'll have more control of the company, right? When you go out and raise money, typically you have to give up stock in your company in exchange for that cash. So the more stock you can retain, the better you'll be off in the long run. So I have sort of a typical day I thought I'd share with you. I guess just on that, let me just stop for a second and say, do you guys have any questions on the initial story there?
When you said World Trade Center, I mean, did you mean Freedom Tower?
That's correct. Yeah, Freedom Tower.
Okay,
it's called One World Trade Center or Freedom Tower. Yep.
Okay, see, I didn't know that. Okay.
Back in the days, we used to call it Twin Towers.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
So that's your actual view in the background.
This is a picture of the view, but yes, yeah, okay. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
So your background shot is your actual office?
Office, yeah. Yep.
I'm trying to think of another question because I feel bad. We're just talking about the background.
I have an interesting question. Were you scared right before you jumped into your own business? Like how did that feel? And what took you to jump into that? Like, yep. That's like jumping off of a cliff, It's like you're kind of scared and you don't want to.
I agree, and I think I read somewhere that that fear is 3 times more powerful than hope when it comes to decisions that occur in your mind. So it's a very it's a scary determining factor, and fear often rules a lot of our thoughts in where we go, as opposed to hope or guidance on somewhere else. But yeah, first of all, I'll say, before I went on my own, I worked at 2 very large corporations and gained a lot of experience. And I highly recommend that for, it's gonna be horrible. You're gonna hate it. There's a lot of rules and regulations and time reports and expense reports, and you spend almost half your time building reports for your manager. It seems counterproductive, but you do learn a lot about how organizations work. And the experience is invaluable. You sort of got to pay your dues. I really highly recommend working at a large corporation to really understand how they work, their messaging, their marketing, their HR, all of that stuff. Learning all and doing it to learn it, right? Seeing how their employee handbook looks, seeing how employees request time off, and learning the ins and outs of that organization. So when you do start your own, you can take all those things you learned and apply it there. Yep. But to answer your question, after working at these 2 large companies, I felt like I had learned enough to start my own company. And listen, you don't have to invent anything new to become a millionaire, right? All you have to do is do something and do it well. I started a partner business. There's hundreds of thousands of other partner business, and this is successful along with all the other ones. So don't feel like you can do anything. You can become a millionaire at anything, at any business. It doesn't have to be anything new. You just got to do it. You got to do it with passion and do it right, and it will be successful. But at the time, I was I think it was 27 when I left Microsoft, or 26. But I'd say the major thing that really helped me there was I wasn't married and I didn't have kids at the time. So I figured, well, if I fail, it's, you know, I just have to downsize my apartment or go live with my parents. It's not that big of a risk. So, and I figured now would be the time to get it started before I get married and have kids, and there could be more or bigger consequences. And I also felt if it didn't work out, I could probably reapply for my job at Microsoft and get it back. Because there a lot of people at Microsoft do that. That company's sort of known for taking employees back in all the time. And that was really the decision. I figured it was now or never. There's only so many tomorrows. We don't have a whole lot of time on this earth, and so I'll give it a shot. It was scary. Like, you know, the first 9 months, it was a lot of work. And even the first few years, it was a lot of work, especially organically, and building, you know, not raising any money to do it, but self-funding it based off the profits of your existing customers. You have no choice but to slow grow it.
So it took a long time before you saw your fruits of your labor?
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, the beginning, we were just doing consulting. Yeah, I mean, we probably broke even or were negative for the first few years, for the most part. But yeah, and to be honest, I mean, we were probably around a $3 million company for the last 16 years. And then recently we've had a lot of success and trying different things. I almost look at it like, you know, some people I talk to are like, wow, you know, you're running a $25 million company over 18 years. That's amazing. I look at it like it took me 15 years to figure it out before we were able to go from 3 million to 25 million. And it took a lot of time to strategize and get it done. It wasn't an overnight success. It took time to build it. Some years revenues were down over others. I've made my share of mistakes, but I definitely make sure that I learn from them and continue.
I just have a question. So those years when you guys came up negative, like what inspired you to keep going? Because I feel like if I was trying to run a business and, you know, my target wasn't where it needed to be, or, you know, it was less than what I wanted it to be, I would feel really demotivated. So like what kept you going so many years to like keep it growing?
That's a great question. I would have to say blind trust in myself.
Jeez.
Right? Well, I will say this. I looked at it this way. When things were down, it was typically due to market conditions, not because we did something wrong or we're not doing a good job. All of our customers always said, you guys do a great job. We just don't have the budget because the financial crisis hit, or, you know, the stock market is down, or we lost our customer. It was never, you guys suck and we're going to go find someone else. So because of that, I really believe that if I just stick around, even though it's a tough time, even though we're negative, when the customers do get better and they get the budget back, they will come back to us, and they did.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, I have a question now. So you mentioned that you're a partner company with Microsoft.
Yeah.
And it took you a bit more time than you expected in order to become profitable to your approval. But after that, were you able to expand? Because you mentioned that you have a lot of you have offices in, you know, on every continent and in many different countries. So were you able to expand because of your recent well, not so recent, but like you're like within like the past few years, were you able to expand in those areas because of the success? And what type of product did you offer to see that success?
Yep. Yeah. Similar to, like, you know, I mentioned, you know, it wasn't until 15 years ago that we sort of had this, that we figured out the formula and took it to the next level, and we got really successful. We grew rapidly. We were only in the US and we were only in New York, really, up until 15 years ago. And then about 3 years ago, we started going international. With the success that we had in the US, we wanted to replicate that globally. So we first started off with the easiest route that we saw, which was opening an office in all the English-speaking countries, right? So you have Canada, UK, Ireland, South Africa, Kenya for the most part, India for the most part, Australia, New Zealand. So we focused on the English-speaking countries first, because our existing employees could work with those customers. And then once we have a solid foundation there, then we started going after the larger non-English countries. Specifically, right now it's just Germany and France. So we have some German speakers and some French speakers working in those countries. But yeah, everything was phased out. You know, I would love to tell you that I put together a detailed business plan and executed against it perfectly, and everything worked out the way I wanted. I'm sure you've seen some of those memes where, you know, success looks like this, right? But really it's like this, and then you end up over here. It's exactly the same thing. There's so many curveballs and things that happen, both in business and in life, that can affect that route. But it's just that never-ending persistence, and the desire, right, to want to build and grow it, the passion.
Other than the language barrier, what other obstacles did you face taking your company international?
Wow, yes, that's a great question. There's, you know, I never got an MBA. I never went to business school. I never worked for a company outside the U.S. I knew nothing when it comes to international business. I just figured it out on my own. I knew that I wanted to do it. I knew that there was potential there. I also looked at some of our existing customers, found out which ones of them had offices in other countries, and then I asked them to make introductions to those offices so that the Hanson Group in that country could start working with them and help with the revenues. But I would say it was it's the formation of a company. Number one, every country has its own rules and regulations. Most are very strict. Some are stricter than others. And then also, so you basically have to find a lawyer in the country to set it up. Then you have to find an accountant to help register for sales tax or VAT tax, things like that. So just figuring out how each country works and ticks was a lot more difficult than I ever expected. Yep.
I have a question. What did you do to compensate for the losses during the time that your business wasn't really flourishing the way you wanted it to? I mean, because, you know, realistically speaking, you have employees, you have bills. So how was that? Like, what did you do?
So the majority of it was we would ask if we had payments that we had to pay vendors, we would ask to delay payment on them. I have a hierarchy when it comes to paying, to making payments when we're in a cash flow situation. First and foremost, employees get paid first. Behind that would be our 1099 contract employees. Behind that would be our vendors, or our strategic vendors, important vendors, and then the non-strategic vendors. So that's the way the payments go out. And those non-strategic vendors at the bottom, if we need more time to pay them, we'll ask them. But we would start with the vendors first and push out payment terms in there. Listen, there were many times in the beginning where I didn't take a paycheck for a few months, so that the new person I hired would get paid and wouldn't get upset and walk out the door. And I just ran up credit card bills, or there were a few times I took a loan from my parents to help, cover rent or whatever, or a relative. So we never had a banking relationship. That's probably another key thing you're really going to want to do. Is when you do start a business, or if you have started a business and you have a small business bank account, you probably open it online. You really want to go to the branch where you opened it. You want to talk to that manager once a month, find out what new programs they have, talk about your existing. But building that relationship with a local banker will really tremendously help you. For example, there was a big government called Paycheck Protection Program, or the PPP, that just that the government just released to help small businesses with cash flow, and it really went to all the businesses that had a relationship with their banker. If you didn't have a relationship with your banker, then you probably didn't get any of that that bailout money. So that was one thing I really underestimated. Again, it probably wasn't until about 14 years ago that I realized the importance of having that relationship with either a community bank or one of the big banks. But building that up, making sure they know who you are, you're checking in with them and seeing what other services they have is really important.
You said that you forfeited your pay so someone else would get pay, not get upset.
Yes.
What do you mean by that, though? Why would you do that? I'm trying to understand.
Yeah. Well, listen. So if you're the majority shareholder in the company, right? You have, even though the company's private, you can't just go out and sell those stocks. You're much more willing not to take a paycheck here or there, or to forego a paycheck if you need to, right? I'm not saying you build a business not getting paid. You build it with you getting paid, but if there's a cash flow, sometimes there's cash flow situations or there's a downturn where you do need to either not pay yourself or delay paying yourself. I would typically, when I didn't get paid for 3 months, for example, I would get paid later on that cash. It's not that I just gave it up entirely. I would pay myself later because I knew that we needed the money for something else at the time.
Greg, that's very humble of you. Right there, you're thinking like a true businessman, because at this certain time you need to solve a problem that you know that in the future you could fix.
Yeah.
It's like an investment. Yeah. It's like an investment almost.
It's 100%. Listen, I mean, a lot of small businesses, and we were a very small business for a long time, don't have a line of credit, don't have a rich uncle that can loan them money, and have to be really scrappy when it comes to cash flow. Oftentimes we would, and there's little levers too that you can play with so that you're not in that situation that I've learned over time. For example, if you have customers that owe you money, you could offer them a deeper discount if they pay before their bills due. We did that for many years when, typically our invoices are due in 30 days. If we needed the cash earlier, we'd call that customer up and say, hey, we'll give you an extra 5% if you can pay it 15 days early instead of when it's due. So there's little things like that that you can tweak to help with cash flow, but cash flow is king. I mean, I was never a big numbers person. I really didn't like math. I still don't like doing the accounting side of the business, but I had to learn it. As much as I hate doing it, it's the part of the business that I don't like. It's the most fundamental, and if you're not keeping a close eye on that, you can get out over your skis and find yourself in a very difficult financial situation.
I have a question. As a CEO, so what are your expectations from your employees? Like, what are you, what are your objectives? Like, what is exactly the specific things that you want from somebody that is working for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first of all, I expect way more from myself than I do employees. I try and I'm probably a workaholic. I guess you could call it that, right? I probably work 14 hours a day, maybe 6 hours on weekends each day, and so my expectation for myself is pretty high, but I don't expect that from my employees at all. I expect them. In fact, I don't email my employees on weekends. I don't text them. I don't text them after hours or email them after hours. I try to be very respectful of their time. We have our culture here is a work from anywhere and work from wherever mentality, meaning no one has to come to an office. they can work from wherever they want. If they want to go move to Puerto Rico and work from the beach every day, that's fine with me. As long as they're getting the work done, it doesn't matter. And we also have a work from whenever policy. So if you want to do 4 hours from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. and another 4 hours from 9 to 1 a.m., you can work whenever those 8 hours you want. You don't have to do them from 9 to 5. So I think extending that flexibility to our employees, they really enjoy. A lot of them, pick up their kids from school and take breaks during the day and things like that. So if you're flexible with your employees, they're much more willing to work and stay in your company. Yep. I'll run you through a quick, just sort of a typical day. So I'm usually up around 4:30 or 5 in the morning. I usually grab a cup of green tea. I'm not a big coffee drinker. I used to be a big coffee drinker, but I've slowly been transitioning to green tea, a little healthier. But typically I make a beeline for my desktop here at home, just because Europe is already, it's like 10 a.m. in Europe already. Same thing in Africa and the Middle East. So I start checking in on what's going on with the companies over there, employee requests, customer requests, partner requests, because it's already, the day is already hopping overseas. So I'll spend my morning doing that. I'll also check WhatsApp. We communicate a lot through WhatsApp with employees internationally. It's just a lot easier and less expensive than text. And I really love that morning time. It allows me to concentrate before the U.S. wakes up and things get crazy. After about 45 minutes of checking the overseas emails, I usually have around 2 hours before the U.S. starts picking up. I start planning out my important tasks. I'm a big checklist guy. I'm a big to-do guy. Every day I have the things that I got to get done that day and the things that I'd like to get done on top of that. I try to limit the things that I have to get done to 10 items. I noticed that for me, 10 is about the max I can do per day. If things are really humming and I can get to that, so I'll limit the things that I got to get done to that, no more than 10. And then the additional things I'd like to get done, or maybe 3 or 4 on top of that. I also learned another hard thing, especially starting out where you're the only person doing it, was delegation. In the beginning when it was me, I was doing everything, and then as we slowly hiring people, it took a while to sort of build a muscle to say, I know I can do this, but I shouldn't be doing this. My time is better spent, doing these sales calls instead of looking for a rounding error in our accounting system, right? Let me just, even though it's bothering me and I kind of want to do that, I got to look at myself and say, is this really the best use of time at the moment? And I always try and sort of weigh my tasks based on revenue generation. When I'm looking at all the things I have to get done for the day, I'm always focused on which of these will generate the most amount of revenue. So, and then usually around then, at least when the offices were open, probably around 9 o'clock in the morning, I would walk from my apartment here in Midtown Manhattan down to World Trade. I usually stop around 14th Street and take the subway from there just to finish it off if I don't have time to walk the rest of the way. But yeah, once I'm in the office working. Typically around 5:30 I leave, get back to the apartment with my wife. We like to cook dinners together and spend a little time around there. I find cooking to be therapeutic. We don't get crazy. We're not doing souffles or anything. It's just like pasta and burgers and simple stuff, simple and fun stuff. Then we typically watch some TV, watch some news. And then around 7:30, I check email one more time, see what's going on, because around that time it's morning time in Australia and New Zealand. So I check in to see what's happening over there, spend another hour or two working, and that's pretty much my typical day.
I have a question. It seems that like Azure, I did a little research on it. Azure is like one of those very, very well supported systems, and with Microsoft providing or offering that service, um, it allows all the customers to like not have so much hardware cost and space costs if they're like larger organizations. So
Yeah.
how does your organization, how does your company find a market opportunity in the new space that Azure is in since like 2016 with selling IaaS solutions, I think it is.
Yeah. Yeah, infrastructure as a service. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's I mean, pretty much every customer we have, and we've worked with around 3,000, 4,000 companies in the last 18 years. I'd say 500 of those are active in terms of, they're working with us several times a year on different projects, or they're buying Azure from us. Yeah, so we got every customer, really, they just through word of mouth for the most part. And again, it just took a long time. It wasn't, we didn't have any massive ad budget or marketing campaign. Obviously, we have a website. We tried some SEO and some AdWords and things like that. We never found that very successful. What we really did is when we got a customer, sometimes Microsoft would refer them over. Sometimes colleagues would refer them over, or sometimes they just found us through the website. But once we got the customer, what we got really good at is, the hard part is getting the customer. Once you have them, that's great. So what we focused on when we had them was expanding into other departments within that company. Because once you have a relationship, they know you, they like you. They'll make introductions to other managers in that company to help you succeed and get business from them. And they'll also make introductions to other business managers that they know or they're friends with in the industry. But they won't do it by default. You got to ask. You got to say, hey, we really knocked the cover off the ball on this project for you. I got to ask you a favor. Would you mind introducing me to 1, 2, 3 managers that you've worked with in the past, or people that you know in the industry? A lot of these managers, they keep groups, or they have either social or work roundtables, if you will. So, for example, in New York, all the law firms are sort of in cahoots, at least on the IT side. They have a monthly legal IT roundtable with all the managers from all the legal firms in New York. And so they all know each other. They all know who's who at all the other firms. And a lot of them know, whether that's HR, sales, operations. A lot of these people know who their peers are in other companies, and they'll be more than happy to make the recommendation for you if you just ask.
Okay.
Yep. I got some other, I wrote down a few things that I sort of gathered over the years, or just put to paper right now. But these are some words of wisdom that I wrote up when thinking about talking today. So the first, I think I mentioned it already, but follow your passion and the money will come. If you're doing what you love, the passion will show. Customers will see that, and you'll be successful. Also, I'll say, I think the most important trick for me is to realize that happiness is a choice that you make and a skill that you develop. And happiness also for me is wanting what I have, or being happy really with what I have. I often find that desire is sort of the opposite of happiness for me. Whenever I'm like, oh, I really wish I had that. Oh, I really, look at that person, look what they have. Oh, look at that car, I wish I had that. It creates this unhappiness in my psyche. And so just to be happy with the things you have has really helped. And listen, I mean, if you look at things on a global scale, I read the other day that if you're making over 68,000 per year, then you're in the top 1% of income worldwide. Right? If you look at the billions of people out there, 99% are making less than 68,000 per year. So keeping all that in perspective and being happy with what you have. Also, I'll say, don't be afraid to make mistakes. I've made a ton of them, but obviously learn from it. Oftentimes, bad decisions make really good stories. So as you make these bad decisions in business, I guess you could say in your personal life too, that take notes on them and remember them, because they'll often be stories that you can tell to your friends or other business folks when you're sharing your success stories. Another thing too is, I mean, this may sound a little eerie, but I have an app on my phone. It's a death countdown clock. You can go to any app store and search for it.
I don't know why I knew you were gonna say that. I have no idea. I just felt like you were gonna say something like that.
That's so funny. Well, maybe because I started with it sounds a little more.
Yeah, you were like, it's kind of eerie. I'm like, wait.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, you put in your age, you put in other factors, and it estimates the time that you have left on Earth. I checked mine this morning. It said 29 years and 27 days. And I'll tell you, nothing concentrates my time more than knowing how many days I have left, right? Of course, listen, I'm probably going to live much longer than that. But knowing that I have 10,000 days remaining, and knowing that that's really not enough time to get done everything that I want to get done, it really helps keep me focused. So I recommend downloading that app and looking at it once in a while and remembering our time here is limited. Stay focused on your goals.
You should be a comedian. I'm dying over here. I'm literally dying over here. What a coincidence, talking about death calculator or whatever.
Right. Also, I'll tell you, I never really invested in the stock market when I was younger. I should have, and I regret it. Even if you can just put $20 a day in, anything will help. There's a great app called Robinhood. You can download it. Gives you recommendations on what to invest in. They're even coming out with fractional shares. So if you can't afford an entire share of Microsoft, you can put like $20 into it and it gives you a fractional share. There's also things called Acorns. If you Google those, there's another app where it takes, whenever you buy stuff on your credit card, it takes the change, puts it into an investment account and starts investing it for you. So I know it's hard to invest when you're young, but I can't emphasize enough. There's a law of compounding returns. And the earlier you get in and the earlier you start investing, your money will exponentially grow. And now's the time to do it while you're in your 20s, or as early as possible. Other things I just wanted to mention. So I thought I'd share with you my favorite book. My favorite book doesn't show up here, does it? There we go. It's called Tools for Titans. It's a great book. It looks pretty thick and large, but it's about 200. They interviewed all the top entrepreneurs and successful people in the world, and they boiled down what they do, each person, to like 2 or 3 pages. And you can read, and the way it's written, you don't have to read it cover to cover. If you don't like the person or it's not relevant to your area, or maybe they're interior designer or something, like, you can skip that person and go to the next. But they got everyone from music moguls to business people. It's a great read. Definitely recommend it.
Is that Tim Ferriss? Did
It is, yes. Yep. Tools of Titans, Tim Ferriss.
Okay.
Yep. I also was thinking in this book, he asked a lot of people, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? And so I thought about that question. I would tell my 20-year-old self, I would share with my 20-year-old self a formula for greatness and success. And for that, I would say it's really boils down to two things for me: consistency and routine. Right? When I was young, I was very unstructured. I was very inconsistent. Now I sleep and wake at the same time every day. I have routines for bedtime to help slow down my mind and wind down. I have morning routines when I get up. I don't have a TV in the bedroom. There's always, I always read an hour before I go to bed. But staying consistent is really a really key to success. Doing the same thing over and over again, it's boring, but you will see huge success if you can come down with a consistency and a routine in your life. He also asked in this book, what's the best advice you've ever received? And I would answer that question, when I was at Microsoft, I was in a meeting with my boss. My boss's boss was there, and my boss's boss was there. There were also around 20 other employees in the room. And we were talking, and this is in the 90s again, we were talking about the new version of Microsoft Windows that was launching and how we wanted to ask Microsoft's customers to upgrade. In the meeting, there was a strategy that was laid out, which I really didn't like, and I didn't think it was going to work. But I held back. I didn't say anything. I just sort of bit my tongue. I was young, whatever. I just listened. And afterwards, I went into my boss's office, and I told her exactly what I thought and how I think they should do it. And she had said, "Wow, that's great perspective." And then she looked me in the eye and said, "Why didn't you say anything? You were there in the meeting. You had an opinion. Why didn't you speak up?" And I'll never forget that. From that moment on, I try not to let my fear prevent me from speaking my mind or sharing my opinion. If I think it's valuable, I should be sharing it and not be scared to do that. So I would encourage you to do the same thing. Don't be afraid if you're in those meetings to speak up. Don't think, oh, because I'm too young or I don't have the experience. You're not going to learn unless you don't speak up. So I definitely recommend that.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
What was the hardest thing you had to overcome, like in general in life, period?
Woo! The hardest thing. Okay. There's quite a few. I would say smoking. Yeah, I smoked cigarettes up until about 5 years ago, from the age of 18 till like 42. Anywhere from half a pack to a pack a day. I quit many times and started back up again many times. It was definitely one of the hardest things physically that was very, very difficult. Yep. It's funny because in the end, I tried patches, I tried the gum, I tried the vapes, I tried all that stuff. In the end, it was, I just made a decision, went cold turkey. The first 6 months were hell, but after that, little by little, I started thinking about it less. And years later now, I'm smoke free. It was not easy.
Did you consider how many people you were going to impact when you first started your business?
I didn't. And someone also said recently, dream bigger. Like, you can be much bigger than you think you can. And in the beginning, I just thought, I'll probably be a one-man show, which I didn't mind. I'd like to grow it, but I'll probably just, and then it picked up momentum, and then I figured, okay, great, we'll just be sort of in New York City. and work with customers there. And then we had customers reaching out to us from New Jersey and Connecticut, and then we expanded into there, and it grew and grew and grew, way better than I thought it would, or I could have planned or imagined. But I just kept at it, even when things were slow. Or another thing too is when we lost a deal to a competitor, I made it a point to personally call up the customer and find out why. Was there anything we could have done better when we submitted our proposal? And they're all pretty honest. You know, the pricing was bad, the sales pitch wasn't good, we didn't think you're large enough, we didn't think you had the expertise, you didn't bring the right team to do the presentation, and you learn more from those lost customers than the customers you win. As long as you build that feedback loop to go back and say, what did we do wrong and what could we do better? You know, I'm just asking you how, so I can improve my company as a manager and as an owner. And they'll be very honest with you.
All right. Thank you so much, Greg, for this session with the students. And I want to just be respectful of your time. It's actually 4:02, guys. So we're going to wrap up. And again, last things that you want to say to them, Greg, before we wrap?
No, I'll just mention what I mentioned in the beginning. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Gregory Hanson. You can send me a friend request there. You can reach out through LinkedIn. Lori, you can share my email with everyone. I do get a lot of emails, so probably LinkedIn messaging is probably better. I get far less LinkedIn messages, and I check those regularly than I do emails. But yeah, feel free to reach out. More than happy to help. And if you're also interested in some of the free Azure training,
we're definitely going to reach out and talk to you about that. I'm going to have a conversation with you after. At some point, I'm going to try to reach out and schedule some time with you because I want to understand how we can link you into our programs. But I want to also let you know that Fridays are our EQ day. So they do coding Monday through Thursday, and then on Fridays we spend the entire day doing team building activities, leadership development, communication skills. Today was a big focus on communication skills, and then we have our guest speakers come in the afternoon. And so part of their homework assignment for doing these Friday sessions is they're going to do a 300-word characters or less message out to you to start building their networks. We're getting them to be really savvy on LinkedIn so that when they start to apply for jobs and start to look for their opportunities to expand their networks, they can do that through these guest speakers. So so they'll be doing that. So just want to give you kind of a heads up that that's going to be coming your way.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. And oh, by the way, just one more piece of advice here. If you haven't heard of toastmasters.org, we highly recommend all our employees, and we pay for our employees to join. But it's a way for you to practice your public speaking in front of a group, which is an invaluable skill set that to have in the marketplace.
Great. All right, fantastic. So thank you so much again, Greg. I will be in touch. The students will be reaching out to you, and we'll let you get back to your day. And thank you again for your time. Really
all right, great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.